Okay, hello guys. Welcome to our very first business development webinar by Nocode Africa. Really sorry for joining late. Okay, this is like 1 minute behind the time. Okay, so I hope you guys are doing great. For me, I actually feel super excited and happy. It's weekend. I like weekends because I don't get to do so many things. I just get to rest and try to think about other things, the things that I can do the next week. Yeah. So really cool. I know it's a weekend. I really hope that we can have a lot of people joining us. So let me try to like drop the information on the community so we can have more people joining. Just let's give like 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. Sending out reminders to everyone else to just join the class. This is going to be one of the best classes, really, because, uh, you know, a few days ago we've been working mostly about how to, build a particular application. We started by talking about how to build a real estate application using Flutter Flow without coding, and then we did talk some few things about business, but not really like formally, right? This is like the very first class we're going to be talking about business development, and the very first part, which is like ideation, right? And there is no better thing to talk about at the beginning of business development class than ideation, because it basically determines the success of any startup or business, right? Because at the beginning of it, you might be thinking about reinventing the wheel. You might be thinking about waiting until you have that very super novel, unique idea before you embark on your entrepreneurial journey, not knowing that you should just understand the concept of ideation first. And then after that, you can think about how you can really go on from there. So I wouldn't like to say so many things with regards to ideation. I will just wait until we can have a good number of people here. I think we have just 1 more minute before we now, extend pleasantries to ourselves. Okay, so let me just like share it to as many persons as possible in the community. You can do the same thing too. You can put it on your status, you can share it to your friends, and let's make this a very interesting session. Okay, so while we're waiting for more people to join us, I think one of the things that we can do right now is to just, say hi to ourselves. And I can see here that a few persons have also extended their pleasantries here. So hi, Audrey. Hi, Joy. Hi, Kato, Victoria, Victor, Jonathan, Isa. Good to have you here. Pixel, Jennifer, JJ. All right, good to have you guys here. So if at all you're here, you can just like drop a comment saying hi, you know, anything really. Just describe how excited you are, and I will just like flash your name on the screen. Yeah. So hi, Temitope. David, good to have you here as well. Okay. Michael, good to have you. All right. I will just keep flashing it like that as people keep joining. Okay, so we're going to start. We're already like 5 minutes past the time. So we're going to start the class. So today we're going to be talking about ideation. And we have in the studio, right, the StreamYard studio, the Williams Praise. And Williams is going to be the one that will be handling this session. And I really want you to like not take this for granted, really, because I know that the bootcamp is free, and most of the things that we are currently like learning you're supposed to actually buy it. Like personally, myself, right? I have courses on Udemy. I sell these things that I teach you for free, actually. And then even the courses that I have on Udemy, I give to you guys free as well, right? I am doing this not because I want you to take it for granted. I'm doing this because I really want you to learn. I really want you to grow as well. All right. So the same thing with regards to this class. I want you to take it as important as possible, right? Don't take it for granted at all because this is supposed to be like a paid master class, and you're basically just getting it for free. Yeah. So let me just introduce Williams. So Williams is, I'm going to bring Williams to the studio. Williams is an entrepreneur, and he is also the chief product officer at Pendulum. And he's someone that is very passionate about sharing his knowledge about entrepreneurship, about technology, um, with different people, right? And there is uh, there is a very big impact that is always created when you get to connect with someone like this, because you get to benefit from his experience, failures, successes, and different ideas and strategies that he is supposed to actually share in a master class, like a paid master class. So you'll be getting it for free, right? And I really want you to like really not take this for granted, and try to see how you can stay active in the class and write down questions. This is one of the best times that you can actually like put down all the questions. You have all the freedom to share your ideas, but of course limit the intellectual property of your business. Okay. So Mr. Williams, good to have you here.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. Thanks for that such grand opening. And
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. I hope you're feeling good.
yeah, I'm pretty good, and I think I'm pretty excited to also be part of what you're trying to put together because I mean, I was sitting in my domain, my space when you reached out to me and you're like, let's do this together. And I felt more excited because, like you said, I'm passionate about looking into founders and entrepreneurs about the value that being a user experience designer brings to the table. And that's one of the reasons why I shot for the stars, if you put it in that context. I'm part of the C-level suit, executive at Pendulum. And, I play various roles in terms of overseeing both the CTOs and about, a couple of developers to ensure that the business, the user, and the technical part of things are going pretty great, around what we're trying to put out there, as a company. But yeah, it's pretty great to be here, and also I'm excited to also communicate, my 2 cents about ideation. Like I said, I'm no Steve Jobs, but we're walking in his in his footsteps. So yeah.
So I beg to differ really. So
Yeah,
the reason why I'm saying that is because yesterday when I had a discussion with someone who told me that he knows you, that's David, and he told me
yeah.
that you're actually Steve Jobs. So I'm taking you as a Steve Jobs.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Thank you very
so
much, David. It's good to be
yes,
here. Mhm.
thank you very much for accepting to share your knowledge and your experience in this
Yeah.
class. I am super grateful. Let's do this.
Yeah. All right.
Okay,
Okay.
so
Hello,
the
guys.
floor is yours
Okay.
now.
Yeah.
I will
Yeah,
just sit
okay.
back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, hello guys. Like I said, it's lovely to be here, and I'll be pulling up I'll be trying to share my screen on a slide deck I prepared for this particular course on ideation, and also like David said, it's quite. I would say it's a very important, concept to really fathom because there is no business that comes to play without ideation, without first thinking about what it is you're trying to do. In fact, ideation begins from the ground level of even thinking about, hey, what am I going to eat? I mean, you have an event, what am I going to put on, what am I going to wear? So this ideation. And I'd like to pull up my screen. Give me a moment to do that. um yeah, I think you could leave a like in the chat if you can see my screen. I think it's up. I don't know if it's being displayed right now. Okay, yeah.
Yes, we can actually see your screen. It's currently
Yeah.
being displayed.
Okay. Beautiful. All right. So let's get into it. So we've already talked about my role, but I'd like to explain it a much, a bit brief. So being a CPO, Chief Product Officer, one of my responsibilities in the daily operations of Pendulum is basically to oversee the design requirement and also communicate that across the technical requirement and then also the business requirement. And these things must create a balance. That is what being a product designer is, or that is what putting a product in the market is. And like we've also already stated, we're talking about ideation today, and I would want to jump into it. Yeah. So these are a few things we'll be covering in terms of the content for this particular guide and a few things that we'll be learning. We'll be taking a recap on ideation. Like I said, we all already constantly ideating. In fact, for you being here, what you like, should I be here? Asking those questions is about ideation too. You're thinking about the value that you're going to get from this. Is there going to be value? Is there going to not be value? It's about ideation. That is what ideation is about. What will I wear? What will I put on? What will I eat? What skill should I deviate in? Should I become a founder? These are all concepts of ideation. And I'd like to also quote a very good friend of mine, but I'll leave that to the next slide. So, recapping on this now, we're going to talk on the recap of ideation, context of problem framing, and also ideation in itself in terms of the techniques and also how to perform one. We'll look at the metric of evaluation because there is no ideation without decision making. I mean, if you say what are you gonna eat? You have to make a decision, right? So you'd be like, I'm gonna take beans today. I'm gonna take rice, something. So, yeah, that tracks. Also, we're gonna look into MVP planning and also feature prioritization because other than the process of evaluating your concept, you also want to plan an MVP in terms of creating a product. And we'll look more into what it is and also the feature prioritization. And hopefully, we take a conclusion and possible QAs. So moving on, we have slide 3. And first off, I've already established a while that ideation is around us. It's around, you know, asking questions and figuring out taking actions or responses. Also, ideation, like I said, work closely with decision making, which, like I said, decision making is more like response according to the ideation cycle here, which I'll talk about a bit. Also, I want to draw our attention to what we call creative blocks. I'm pretty much sure that most of us who creatives have heard of that before. Creative block, writer's block, and blockers or blockade in terms of the terminologies used in a product development life cycle or team. And what this means in terms of the psychological aspect to what it means that when you're experiencing creative block or writer's block or whatever block you're having, it just means the absence of direction. As an artist, you might be staring at a blank piece of paper or a blank white canvas, and or as a thinker, you're staring at a white board, and then you like it's empty, of course, and thinking about what do you want to do, what are you trying to achieve, how do you make certain things work. Is all about that is what creative block is. And I also want to bring out this quote I said I'm going to talk about, which is Wesley's quote. Now, Wesley is an ex-CTO of IDEA, I think a United States company as at then. And there was a situation where I was in his presence having to pitch a particular idea from Pendulum, and he was astonished by the the quality of work put in. And he said, "This is amazing," quote unquote. He said, in his time as being a CTO in IDEA, most designers have come to him with challenges or rather ideas. And like I said, everyone has an idea. Everyone, you have an idea, I have an idea. But one of the things that differentiate most people from everyone is also the ability to achieve them. And he said, once he asked them, how do we go about this? Then they're like, well, I don't know. I don't really know. And that is one of the things that kills many dreams or kills many thoughts, ideas in a sense of it. So also, I want you to understand and keep this as a keynote that ideation is a process of answering the how. I will say that again. Ideation is a process of answering the how, just in case you're taking note. Ideation has everything to do with critical thinking, but of course not at first. It has more to do with framework, like I spoke about before, referencing what creative writer block and all of those things are, is an absence of direction. So most of the times, a lot of we have idea, hey, I want to do this. Now, what steps are you putting in place to doing that? Which is like the idea is an ideation, so it's an action. It's more of a verbal word. You understand that depicts action. What action are you taking to achieve what you're saying you want to do? That is what ideation is, and definitely. Speaking about the processes, so ideation has a framework, which I also refer to as the ideation cycle. As you can see it here, it starts from context, framing, thinking or ideate in terms of a noun, and also response or respond. That is the circle around ideation. I'll walk through each of these. I think with the coming few slides, we'll walk through what each of them, how they play and the context to what they mean, and we go on. So yes, we are in slide 4, which is context. I'd like to remind us of the phrase context is key. I believe most of us have heard that if you've not heard that before. So context is key. Context is what defines right and wrong in most cases. Not all cases, but yeah, in most cases. Let's take an example of I don't know if any of us have ever been in a situation of being a peacekeeper, maker, or a judiciary kind of a system where you have to settle disputes between two persons. It could even be in terms of workmates or teams or whatever. And you ever agree that when you listen to one party A, you're like, yeah, yeah, that tracks. That makes sense. I mean, you're right, sort of. And then you listen to party B, and you also like, yeah, that tracks, that makes sense. They are right as well. But these two are having conflicts, and the reason why that conflict seems to exist is because of context. So you as a neutral ground, you want to look at the context of why they're even having that misunderstanding and try to correct it. That is what, how context play in terms of ideation. And if you look at the quote we have on the slide, Adenike Ogunlesi, for some of us who don't know her, she is also one of the lions in terms of the business lions then commercials that, or rather program that we see on YouTube, where business people pitch their product for some level of investment. Yeah, she made a statement in a particular code trying to give feedback to one of the investors, and I think I took note of that, where she said problem solvers are great listeners. And I went further to say, within my own space of working with my teammate, I went further to let them know that for easy comprehension, context helps comprehension. The quicker you can get to the context of a story, the faster your comprehension. And this also is applicable to, those people who might be taking an MBA or in a school system or work system or whatever, anything that deals with an instructional institute. You understand? It's once you get the context of what any lecturer, anybody, or even myself right now is saying or communicating to you, you get the entire full picture. You understand? And to gain context, you need to empathize. And empathy is research. In other words, context is research. So what I mean by this is if you go through the framework of design thinking about ideation and thinking, you want to first look at the problems space, what we call problem scope. And then you want to also test for feasibility and visibility and, what is the possibility of this even existing and happening and being profitable and whatever. And also, what are the challenges, what are the user needs that, these people require. We'll see more into that in details. But however, the point I'm trying to communicate about to you right now is context. Without context, a lot of misinterpretation will occur, a lot of misunderstanding, and a lot of taking out of proportion, as we can see the rest on the slide deck. Moving forward to our fifth slide, we also have the element of context in ideation. Now, we've already established that context mostly is about understanding the environment or the circumstances surrounding a problem, an idea, a thought, situation, and the list goes on. So let us take a scenario where we kind of even discuss right now, we say, hey, what are we going to have for breakfast? I mean, assuming this was the early hours of the day. And then we ask ourselves, hey, what are we going to have for breakfast? And someone respond with, or rather, someone respond with a food that is particularly for dinner. Now we're gonna assume that you just took that out of context, or rather, you just responded out of context, or even to make the situation worse. How about we ask the same question with someone responding now that, hey, why don't you just go for bowling? Just to recap, I mean, let us ask, what are we gonna eat for breakfast? And then someone responding saying, why don't we go for bowling? And then I'm pretty much sure that most of us will be shook. You understand? So yo, you just took that out of context right now. So that is also like the importance of the element of context in this situation. Context could inform better problem framing, what the user needs, what your brand represents, how the society perceives certain things, as you can see in the slide deck, and also context will help you to ideate not out of context. Moving on to our next slide. Now, after context, according to our framework, after context comes framing, what we call problem statement or defining what the problem is. So we want to learn that problem framing sort of gives you a boundary of how far you can go with your ideation, because without that problem framing, a lot of things, like we said, will be highlighted or ideated upon differently. Like, for example, let's say our ideation process is with trying to figure out how do we want to create a car, a moving car, and then we're talking about buying a bicycle wheel or a bicycle tire. That is like pretty much out of context, because it means that whoever responded didn't properly frame the problem or the goal of what we're trying to achieve. And so um, I also recall in a curriculum that I wrote about design innovation. uh, there's this there is this generic standard international, yeah, whatever, statement about thinking outside the box. People like creative people or problem solvers or whatever should think outside the box. While that remained true, I think I reestablished in the fact that it is more about knowing, quote unquote, when to think outside the box or at the corners of the box. So now, in a sense of it, we have three scope in which we would think about stuff. So there is being boxed up inside the box, there is thinking outside the box, and there's also thinking at the edges of the box, figuratively. And now it is about, I feel like more critical thinking is about when. So knowing when to think about stuff outside, inside, or at the corners, is a very good sense of establishing what critical thinking is, as it plays a role in problem solving and problem framing. A well-framed problem gives you a good scope in which you ideate upon. And these are the five W's of framing, which you want to talk about. Who are you building for? Or who is going through the problem, who is the responsibility, trying to address, and all that. You have the what, you have the when, you have where, you have why. These are all frameworks, as you can see on the slide deck, on properly framing a problem, or in other words, stating a problem. This could be problem framing, or it could be problem statement, they're used conversely. Also, moving forward, we also have the ideation techniques. And yeah, this I think the reason why we're here, this is knowing how ideation technique, like I said earlier, the creative block, writer's block, whatever, meaning the absence of direction. With ideation techniques, it kind of give you the ability to get your creative juice flowing. You don't have to be in the, and I'm not in the state of mind, I'm not in in the environment. There are certain techniques you could take to get there. It's just like, you're hitting the gym, or rather, you're pumped up, you're fat, and you really want to slim down and also build some level of muscles. You don't just think about it. There is a framework, there's a technique, there's a pattern that you have to follow, that you have to hit the gym once or twice in a day. You have to do certain types of exercise depending on the goal of what you're trying to improve or the area of the muscle you're trying to build. You understand? So let us have established what ideation technique is, and for clarity, it is a process, it is an action or a step or a stage that you take to achieve or prompt ideas to start flowing. That is simply what ideation techniques or framework is. Ideation can be performed imaginatively as well, promptly and visually. As you'll see from most of these techniques, they kind of, you know, are triggered by different situation, and we'll see more of that as we go on. Also, I want you to know that these ideation techniques have their use cases, have their disadvantages, and also have their advantages. You don't want to use certain technique because of certain situation. Like let's take for a scenario, the brainstorming right now, and you can see according to the definition, it requires a group of people. But if you think about it, we do brainstorm alone. But let's assume that's not the case. Now you'd want to use brainstorming if you're alone, if you are the only designer or the only product, business owner, or you're the only founder in your company. You don't want to use brainstorming, rather you want to use other techniques to ensure that you get the exact amount of ideas that you would have gotten if you had employed brainstorming in a group of people. And also, mind map is okay. So we have mind map and concept mapping, and the variety about both of them, they basically are the same thing. Mind map is more of problem solving, more like centralizing your problem and building upon strategies to fixing it. However, concept mapping is more on opportunity, opportunity proofing or profiling or brainstorming, whatever. So it's more about opportunity evaluation, where you say, "Oh, I have a concept. Oh, okay, let's build a skyscraper." So you start that as a center, and then you say, "Okay, what do we need to build a skyscraper?" And then perhaps you want to get some legalities from the government. Okay, that's that side. You bring a branch of extension. You talk about, "Oh, we need to hire some contractors, some civil engineers to give us whatever." You extend that. You want to look at quantity surveying. You want to look at getting the land in the first place. Those are like the first phase. And now you now focus more on, okay, let us look at the legalities. We need a lawyer. That is one. Then we'll talk about, we need to pay the necessary, land permission rights, architecture, whatever, everything it contains. That is what, how mind map works. And I like you to understand that employing each of these techniques actually yields different solutions or results, depends on the situation. So the fact that now we could have a brainstorming, a topic of discussion where we're talking about, okay, um, how to reach an audience. Let me give you more of a marketing ideation that happen mostly. How to reach an audience, how to gain new leads. And we can decide to brainstorm where we have, several of us in the room, and we just throwing out ideas. And then we can decide, hey, why not we use more of a mind map? And mind map gives you a more depictive picture of the steps you want to take. So brainstorming kind of comes without steps. Mind map comes with steps. That is one of the obvious advantage and disadvantage about both that I've just stated right now promptly. And also, I want to talk about the patterns and dots. Now, as a founder, as a business owner, as a dreamer, as an innovator, someone with the prompt for problem solving, you want to dance in tune or get in tune with patterns and dots. And what I mean by pattern and dot is dot most times are represented as clues. And we see this in games of chess, in games of Good Ultimate Search, or all those reality TVs that kind of or games. I mean, the BBN so also do that, and also that is what we mean by patterns and dots, in the sense that you see clues all around you. In fact, I think that there's an adage that says there are clues all around you. I think it's more of your ability to connect the dots or to pattern up, something like that. So it's about connecting dots, clues to get a pattern. And this is like so mindful to founders because, like I told them, if we talk about this, the history of Steve Jobs in his time with Apple before the coup, I'm going to call it a coup, before he was discarded from being the founder and later got back. We know the story, but mostly I think according to the script, he made a statement that says, he hired someone, I think a marketer from Pepsi, or I can't recall. He hired that person. The person came, and that person kind of, led the coup against him. And I think his statement was he was the worst hire that he ever made. So I want is all talking about this, also putting in context of a romantic relationship. Let's talk about, you just came out from a toxic relationship, and some red flags that some dots, I call them dots or clues, are left, at the side of that. And if you meet someone else that begin to possess, or depict those, similarities, you're already seeing clues, what we call red flags, yeah. And then you connect this, and you know that, okay, this is gonna end in toxicity, or this is gonna end so bad, and you're like, I'm not gonna give my time to this. That is what we mean by pattern and dots, and it is super, super important. I wouldn't say above all else, but it is, because in this pattern and dot, we begin to understand different level of psychology in terms of mental models, human factor, and certain other things that makes ideation interesting. I hope we are enjoying the time, and sorry, I hope we're having a good time with the entire situation. Just, leave your stuff at the comment, and I get back to it. So moving on, I also want to talk about the duality of ideation technique. Now, at Pendulum, there is a particular project I cannot disclose because of an NDA. However, that particular project required that we utilize a concept mapping at first, and later on utilize and how might we, as you can even see clearly on this. So there is the ability to, use the duality or the multiples of ideation technique. It's more like a filtration, like in I think in the processing of crude oil, if I'm not mistaken, their level of filtration, and being a science student, I'm sure we've all had a filtration technique that first remove a bigger mass, and then room separate also a medium mass, and separate a smaller molecule from, whatever we're trying to extract out of it. So know that ideation technique is about knowing what to employ for the use case, because ideation technique can be used in, however scope or a limited scope. And moving forward, we also have how to perform an ideation process. So, performing an ideation process according to the threshold, the roadmap talks about getting context, as you can see, framing the problem, so I have clarity. What are we trying to do? We're trying to brainstorm, okay, about how do we grow our user base? How do we grow our customer acquisition? How do we put a platform that, sells our unique value proposition? So these, just like we saw in what slide 5 or 6, that talks about, the elements of ideation, and we saw that the business identity, the brand identity, is also part of it. So this is what having a proper problem framing could also help you establish, so that you don't ideate out of context. Also, you need to encourage crazy and creative thinking. I mean, not crazy out of context. Yeah, crazy within context is also important. And do not eliminate judgment or criticism, because it's very important. However, you could suspend it when in the process of ideation. Like I said, ideation is an action. So when you process of brainstorming, you just want to quickly write down, what is coming to your mind. Just put it in. Later on, we filter that, which will be our next slide. We'll talk about metric of evaluation. But for now, we suspend judgment and criticism. So you also want to build upon ideas. Yeah, of course, in ideation process, someone can be like, we could partner with so and so, and a greater idea could be, oh, we can even create our own. You understand? So that is what that means by building upon ideas. Also, be open to diversity, and for time bound, you want to know that, well, in a setting of an organization setting, there's mostly, we don't have the entire day to always be conducting ideation sessions, we refer to it as. So we want to mostly be productive with most of our time. So it's important to know that ideation should be time bound, and It doesn't mean that we must get up to 20 ideation all at once. No, it is what we mean is it can always scale over. We can always push it aside. And that brings me to my next point, which is being conscious consciously, or rather being subconscious consciously. So what I mean by that is I'm pretty sure we've had stories about great philosophers in the 80s, 90s who got the solution to the problem while sleeping, while dreaming. And this is like something most of our developer friend will agree to most often, because you might be dealing with a bug or you might be dealing with a very hard situation, and you just go to bed. And trust me, going to bed few minutes after a particular ideation makes you to think a lot subconsciously about that particular process, and you perform ideation in your sleep. And this brings me to when I talked about ideation being an imaginative process as well. Yeah, but this time you're doing it, well, semi awake, not awake per se. And yeah, you it's about being conscious enough to know that, okay, this is it. I've gotten an idea. This is it. And then you pop up of sleep, or you snap out of it, and then you tell the necessary channels, or you respond about it. So moving on, we also have the metric of evaluation, which this part is it's mostly, I would say, my superpower, and also what it means to be a leader, and also what it means to be a decider, a decision maker per se. Because metric of evaluation, I always relate to it as decision making. And metric of evaluation is like testing what idea, which of this idea is feasible. Like, this is the part to be judgmental, not judgmental, but we'll come to that. But however, to be judgmental, and to check what is feasible, is this in the context of what we're trying to solve, what works, and also thoughtful thinking. We've established metric of evaluation as a tool for also decision making. It's not even about, this does not apply to even just ideation. This apply to decision making across, across our daily life. You understand? Should I hang out with this set of friends? Should I go for this event? Should I join this party? Should I apply to this program? It's always an ideation and a decision where we have to evaluate it and make a decision. I'm always one to preach about being objective mostly, and by objectivity, I mean using data to make a decision, or logicality, or yeah, to make decision. And but I think more so there should be a balance between objectivity and subjectivity, because subjectivity could be our subconscious thoughts, could be our conscience, could be other things, could be some level of human feeling and emotion that comes into it. But most of the time, why when we're looking at the professional and industrial space, we more focus on don't be subjective, is because subjectivity has a lot of biases and flaws, which that is a topic for another time. And yeah, in severe cases and complicated scenarios, you know, um, or rather, in when we're talking about pros and cons, for example, the first one, uh, for me, how I handle pros and cons most often is where I say, okay, because yeah, there's some complicated scenarios where you say some things have cons. Not everything is super pro. There's always a disadvantage to something that is of advantage, and there's also a huge pack of this, or rather, advantage to something that is also at disadvantage. So basically, for me, I use more of a logical operation in this context, where I say, if the pros are greater than the cons, then I possibly will be making my decision towards the pros. However, it is not always the case. Like I said, there should be a sprinkle of subjectivity. There could be a situation where, like it's like a game, and then you'd be like, can I risk all these for these? I mean, does this disadvantage really kill this advantage? Even if it's just one advantage and you have like what tens of disadvantages, you want to measure that one. And this also brings me again into the duality of all of these processes you see listed here. Also, I'd like to use this opportunity to digress into impact or rewards and talk about it a bit, because in my current scope, I feel like this is where most founders need to really be educated on, in terms of impact and reward. Like I said, pros and cons have more of a disadvantage because it's super logical. It's higher the greater number over the, so it's more like quantitatively, and impact or rewards is more qualitative. And for impact, it's about, the metric of evaluation, like we can see there. And I'd like to give a scenario about, impact, which from my personal experience, like one happened, during my time trying to grow on LinkedIn, the professional space. I know that I was more enthused with UX, and also, trying to inculcate that into the value of founders, because one of the things, the challenges we face in the industry is most founders or management or executive are not UX inclined, and because of that they face struggles selling their product to customers who really need their product. According to what Steve Jobs said, he said most of us spend our time creating technologies and finding it very difficult to sell. However, UX and product design is more like solving a problem that a current user is going through. And of course, if you're solving a problem, you always be, validated. You always be of value. It's like just like, doctors will never run out of, job opportunities, or, whatever, because they are solving a problem. Not everybody knows how to perform surgery, and that the first person you want to meet when you're having certain symptoms or whatever. But however, my point is, on LinkedIn, when I was trying to generate, grow my presence and whatever, it happened that I generated a lot of followership and comments and engagement with my posts and all of those things. But for me, it was not enough. It was not impact enough. I said I want to see people, adopt this in their day-to-day activities. And like I said, for another person it could be an impact enough, and then, the engagement is growing, and they're cool with it. However, that was not the case for me. And this also brings light into, what I'm trying to establish, that founders need to be able to evaluate what really is impact. This impact over reward, or rather impact or reward. Sorry, I keep saying impact over reward because it's also a similar technique to features prioritization, as we'll see soon. However, what I'm saying is we need to learn what impact really means. For example, a boot camp trying to glorify that, hey, we're producing 5,000 graduates at a bunch. And I'm like, why are we doing that? I mean, are they employable? Are they workable? Are they professional? Are they hireable? And these are the situations that face around us, because most developers, and people I've worked with are not that. So exalting that, you're creating 5,000 or whatever is not impact enough, except that is your limitation. And if I want to compete against you, I will use your limitation as my, unique value preposition and take over the market. So impact is very important, not to overstress it. And also, talking about user experience versus technical requirements, I'm just going to be brief about it to say that in no context should technical requirements overcome user experience. In no context. If you are a UX led company, and like Pendulum, we are a UX led company. And most of the times, I always just talk to my developers and CTOs, and I tell them if we're going through like a brainstorming where I need to make a decision, and they're like, it's take time, it's complex and whatever. I'm like, are we choosing technicalities over experience? And they're like, no, because they understand the vision of what we are and we move forward. However, it is also important to know when to trade experience over technical requirement. And this is the beautiful part of it. And that takes us to the next one, which was technical requirement versus unnecessary experience or complexity. Most of the times, unnecessary experience or complexity is kind of, if I take this out of this, does anything happen? Does the building collapse? Nothing. So, I mean, if it's not needed and then now requires so much technical requirement, why don't you just like take it out and put this back in? So, it's what we mean by technicality over experience or complexity or unnecessary experience. And lastly, we have the SWOT. I'm sure we've heard about SWOT most times, which stands for strength, weakness, objective, opportunities, and threat. And we also use that to evaluate an idea. So if you're talking about, hey, how do we generate customer engagement, and then someone says, why don't we work with influencers, why don't we pay some influencers to partner with and sell a product. Now you want to also evaluate what is the strength of that, what is the weaknesses around that. And one of the weaknesses could be, I know, and our competitor can also overpay this influencer, and before they sell against us. That is a weakness. So you also want to look at the opportunities around that. what is the reward, and all of this stuff. But more importantly, I am like more intentional about stressing on threat, because threat talks about edge cases, and edge cases is a very beautiful metric to always use to evaluate your decision. And edge cases could be, what if these falls in the wrong hands? And also another example could be, how scalable is this? Most of us kind of want to solve a problem for just one, two persons. So solving a problem for one, two persons is good. Like, for example, I can come with an idea and say, so one, two persons are hungry, right? So let's just give them, maybe probably $500 or, $1,000, and they shared, 50-50, 500 per each. If you convert it with recent rates, you know how much that is. And it could solve the problem. Cool. But when we're talking about what happens when we're looking at 50 persons or 100 persons, that begins to bring a whole lot of complication to why the idea is not more feasible. And that is what we mean by metric of evaluation. Moving forward, we also have, yeah, sorry, I think I double moved. Okay. So we have MVP planning. And the story of or the roadmap to ideation, like I said, starts from context. Is what we've been talking about since. We also have the framing. We have the ideation, which we just concluded, and now we're about to respond in terms of response, literally. And when we talk about that, now we're looking more in versioning, what versioning is, and MVP. And there is a huge misconception around this particular, phrase or keyword. Yeah, and that misconception, kind of happens when a lot of founders, business persons or individuals, kind of claim that the idea of an MVP is putting out into the market a sort of an incomplete work, and then gaining early adoption. I also want to bring you into the psychology of sales that says first impression matters. Is a very popular, quote. First impression matters. And one of the disadvantages about that is when you bring in an incomplete product into a ready market, and you do not offer everything you say you do, or people do not, see that or experience that, or say your product is not reliable, it's crashing, the lot of bugs and whatever, because you're trying to test the market. Trust me, if you go back to reiterate, the next time you be coming out, you will have more difficulty trying to sell that product, because a lot of people will never use your product again. And with that, they have gone with a generation of people that would ever have used your product. Because also in sales, the highest all-time sale technique is word of mouth. And if you lose word of mouth, you've lost a generation of loyal customers. And that brings me to what, how Wikipedia defined it, that it is a version. Understand, version is a version of a product that has enough features, quote unquote, that has enough features for early customers to adopt. And I further restated in a curriculum I also wrote in an elementary curriculum, where I restated and gave more clarity to what that definition means. And an MVP simply means a complete product in the basic form that complete or address the problem that you intended solving. So, for example, if the challenge was you want to, if the problem was, you need to get a customer from point A to point C, you don't build a product that takes them to point B. That is not the idea of it. You have to build a product that takes them to that point C. Now, reiteration on that, you can also build that same product. Could that have an AC? Could have other advanced, features that makes their time there more comfortable. And that is why the photo you see by my right, your left, however, the photo you see by that, is what I would say is illustratively wrong, because you don't build a hoverboard. If you want to build a car, if that is a destination according to the photo, you don't build a hoverboard. You don't start with a hoverboard. You understand? A hoverboard solves a different problem. A scooter solves a different problem. A tricycle solves a different problem. A motorcycle solves a different problem. And also a car, which is your goal, is different. Now, a more clearer perspective to think about this or to apply this illustration would have been, you're building a car, and then you build a car, of course, obviously. Perhaps there is no AC. Perhaps the door doesn't open by voice command. Perhaps, whatever, all the necessary intricacies. So this is what an MVP literally means. And MVP kind of helps you in versioning. I believe you already know what versioning is. Basically, when you're going through, which we will see about feature prioritization, it helps you to evaluate all the features you've gotten from your ideas of what you want to create. Oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. After you've tested them and test for feasibility, evaluated them, and now you have a sample of ones that made the cut, maybe 50 features, you want to now prioritize them into an MVP, which simply means versioning. So more like saying prioritize them into version one. So yeah, MVP is like version one, you have version two, you have version three, and that's why the Wikipedia's definition of an MVP tracks that says it's a version. It's a version, meaning there can be more other version with more other advanced features. So that is the difference between them. I'm going to go to prioritization. And this is just a table, a very dummy table of prioritization. It can always take different look and form in different industries or wherever. This is just an example of a prioritization feature, according to ranks, according to versioning, which in this case, my versionings are my ranks. We have version one, two, three. Version one is launched. We have dummy data, like I said, improve user interface, enhance collaboration. These are like all dummy data or whatever. I'm not going to spend much time on this, but that is what it looks like. And also now we have prioritization techniques. Now, coming from our previous slide, we saw that we've already kind of delegated that some features makes the first version, some other features makes the second and the third, and so on. So I want you to know that that wasn't just done subjectively. It was more objective. It was more data driven. It was more methodology, yeah, whatever. So we have the prioritization technique, and in the prioritization technique, prioritization is mostly an active brainstorming within or without groups. So you can do this, of course, in a group or without a group, and also establish and prior to prioritize it, it requires the definition, the understanding of what an MVP is, which I spent most of the time trying to explain what an MVP is, because prioritization, like I said, is about if you flop on your prioritization, you're going to launch a product that, one, does not convert users, two, does not really literally solve any problem, three, cannot be differentiated, four, it's just going to be like every other random platform, and five, is going to be more expensive because the company will have to spend a lot of funds trying to get adoption or customer acquisition in terms of paid customership and whatever services that you offer in terms of money exchange. So prioritization is pretty much important. And also, prioritization utilizes dual techniques. If you notice, most of these things requires dual techniques, because one may not be enough. I think in my entire experience, I've dealt more with Moscow and impact efforts, impact over effort. I've done Rice Score at least pretty much just once. I loved it. It was more data driven. Yeah. And I also like to establish that prioritization metric is like playing a game of quality over quantity or quantity over quality. My preference, quality over quantity. It is very important. So each techniques here, we can see Moscow, it talks about must have, should have, could have, won't have, or will not have. Now, to better frame that, like I talked about, this can also be built in a bigger scale where you want to overlay in a holistic view, segregate your entire company's vision in terms of your future offering. You understand? Let's say, for example, um, WhatsApp recently, in recent time, about 2020, 2022, can't remember, brought out the edit feature that was never there. And people complain it was an obvious flaw. But for some reason, the company were intentional about not bringing that out. And designers, people try to rebrand or complain about these things, lose the concept to what's happening. Basically, it is taking a prioritization, which mostly is coming from the business model. And you will notice that the only time WhatsApp began to have edit feature and certain other feature that you complain about was when WhatsApp's business model changed from just being an overly social media to a business thingy. And that is why we saw the later release of the channel features, the edit features, and more sponsored ads kind of feature going on. And yeah. So That is what prioritization techniques, literally mean. And for the rice score is more of a is quantitative, simply measuring in terms of 1 to 10. I think is more reach, impact, confidence, and effort. You create a data set. Do I have that? Okay, I don't have that in slide. You create a data set, and what it does is for reach, you kind of rate 1 to 10. What are we going to give them for each feature? Impact, and so on. And at the end of the day, do the simple math, which is reach multiplied by impact multiplied by confidence over effort, and then you get a particular right score. But however, I will recommend more of keeping it within odd numbers as little as three, where one talks about pretty poor to average, three excellent. That is why I used to measure most of my right score, at least the first time I did that. Moving forward, okay, and I think this is my last slide. Um, Luckily for us. So we recap on what ideation is. Definitely want to like to know in the comments, if this went home, if this communicated anything to you. However, conclusively, ideation takes a roadmap. You don't have to wait for a supposed inspirational moment to feel like, okay, now I have something I want to say. Ideation technique kind of help you achieve things, in when needed. And that roadmap or framework or circle is what we have here: context, framing, ideate, and response. And also response, we've talked about the difference between being objective over than subjectiveness, and a balance is even more great. And I'd like to end with these few quotes, which I'm pretty sure we definitely know about: the season quotes of know, or rather think different, by Apple, Steve Jobs. And I'll say more importantly, how I preach, advocate, in my spheres of life. I look more into, in order for you to think differently, you have to know differently. So thank you very much. I'll be looking forward to any questions that you may have. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Williams. That was like super educational for me, and I believe it was also
Yeah.
educational for everyone else that attended. Um, I think before we begin getting the questions, I've started all the questions that I saw here in the comment section. Okay, let me start this one more. Okay, so before we get into the questions in the comment, I would like to just, like, you said something uh, during the session. You talked about how some people come up with ideas, and how it is more of it was more like imaginative. So it reminded me of
Yeah.
how I came up with the whole idea of eel space for real. So I think I would like to share it here. It's always like
Yeah.
very exciting for me. So it was a very I don't know, I can't describe how the day was, but I don't think it was like that exciting. Yeah, because it was 2017, and I was
Yeah.
just trying to figure out my life. I just finished my bachelor program, chemical engineering, and then I had a meeting. Okay, I was supposed to have a meeting with somebody the previous day. Let's say today is okay. Let's say today is Saturday, of course. Let's say I was supposed to have a meeting with someone on a Friday, and I
Yeah.
missed out on the correct time to go for that particular meeting. And the young man reached out to me and was like, he was very, he wasn't like angry, but he was more like disappointed. He was like, he expected me to come on time. I didn't call, I didn't even come, and all of that. So I apologized to him, and I had to make sure that the next time that we're having the meeting, which was the following day, I really needed to be awake and be active for the meeting.
Yeah.
So what I did was, now that particular day, I was working almost all night into the day. I didn't even really sleep, and even before the time of the meeting, I was now tempted to actually take a nap. so, so I decided to
Yeah.
take a nap. But the thing is, since I was like super really challenge myself to not miss the meeting this time around, I tried something called okay, now it wasn't like a conscious thing, right? I wanted to do a power nap, but not because I wanted an idea, but I just
Yeah.
wanted to do the power nap because I needed to like wake up really fast and on time so that I can
Active.
go have.
Yeah. And still be active.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what I did was I sat down on a chair. It wasn't like this. It was like a plastic chair. And then I kept the padlock to the shop where I was in my in my right hand, I think right hand or left hand. And then since I was like super dizzy and tired, I just leaned on the chair and I slept off. The idea was when I lose some form of consciousness, right, my hands will become
Yeah.
weak, and then the padlock will leave my hands and smash on the ground, and the noise will startle me, and I'll wake up, and that would have been it. I would have gotten like some few minutes of sleep. Well, it worked. So I did that, and all of a sudden, I don't know how long I slept, but I don't think I slept up to 10 minutes. So the
Yeah.
padlock fell off my hand, smashed on the ground, and made this very loud noise, and it startled me, and I woke up. And the interesting thing about it is that when I woke up, the idea of the original idea of ill space, not what we're doing right now, because we've pivoted a lot, obviously.
Yeah.
So the original idea of ill space was already in my head. Now, before that particular time, my subconscious was like somehow trying to figure out how to really do it. I was trying to see how I can solve the electricity problem in Nigeria, but not for everyone. I was trying to solve it for remote workers, and so I was
Yeah.
thinking how to help people share electricity and space and all of that. I thought about building an electronic and all of that, but just that particular moment when I got startled from the falling of the padlock off my hand on the ground. I got the idea. I didn't just get the idea, I also got the name, right? I got the name of the brand as well, Eel Space. Eel being an electric fish, and then space helping connect people to electricity and space. So I just felt like I should have shared that because, yeah, just like
Yeah.
you said, coming up with ideas is actually something that can come from the place of your imagination. Yeah, a lot of imagination there. Okay, thank you
Yeah.
very much, Williams, for the session. I am super excited about it, and it was like very educational for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
appreciate that.
Thank you very much. So we're going to take some questions. We have lots of questions here, so I will
Yeah, I
fly.
can see the group's
Yeah.
on fire. Yeah.
So let me go. I had somehow start them. Okay, good. Let's start. So I don't know which one should come first. Okay, let's start with this, the first one here. So, okay, so we have here, please, when we finally decide on an idea, what is the best way to approach market research to validate the idea?
Okay. So I want to better phrase this. Okay, so basically, when you have an idea, you want to validate the idea through market research by conducting some level of secondary research, which mostly also throws you into what we call a competitive analysis or a competitive auditing. You understand, to see how, if that idea exists by anyone else, you want to use certain secondary research processes to navigate that. For example, let's say I come up with an idea where I'm like, what's a problem, what's a problem I have in my head to solve. Okay, let's say, okay, what is the job industry like for, UX designers, for example. I could want to first conduct a secondary research. I want to interface, that's what empathy means. And then when I look into, the concept of what are people doing about this, now you have a lot of job boards that, that is from that same idea was their solution. Let's just provide a job board that, kind of houses all the job ads for, designers or whatever to come up on it. So you want to look at what is the job board's weakness, strengths, threats and opportunities. Also, you want to do a comparative analysis of what is that unique value proposition, or what is that unique selling point. So this is how you conduct a lot of market research. And by the time you do that market research and have your particular data, you also want to evaluate those data and track that. Is this something that I'm willing to dive into? Is this the phase, or is this the concept in which my own solution should take? And do you want to create another job board? Or do you think there's an opportunity to create something else? Maybe a maybe a boot camp. I'm just thinking on the spot. That is not related, but yeah, you get the concept. So yeah, I'd like to know if I answered that question in the perspective to how she answered it, or rather asked it. Yeah,
Okay, thank you very much for your response. I would like to contribute a little bit. So,
yeah,
for me, right, I have been a lot of things, right? I think now I am currently more like someone who is very particular about analytics when I I want to do anything. Let me bring you to the side of content creators, like the guys that make content. Now,
Yeah.
let's say you want to let's say you have an idea of creating a particular content. Yes, you have an idea, you want to create a certain content. Now, for me, and from the from the direction of content development, right, the best way to actually do it is making research, like try to go to platforms where these things can actually be put on, right? Let's say YouTube, for instance. Let's say you want to make content on YouTube, and then you want to create a content about artificial intelligence in Africa, for instance. Now, you could just go to YouTube, because YouTube is like a place where we have lots of people putting up content on various topics. And of course, whatever you're thinking about, someone else has already thought about it one way or the other, maybe in a different way. So you could just like go to like YouTube and then type this content, the topic of the content you want to work on. And then from there, you see a result from there. The search engine of YouTube will show you the result of other things related to this same content that you want to work on. And then from there, you can do the next step, which is like follow the money. That's follow the number of people, the particular ideas and content that is actually doing so well on YouTube, maybe views, maybe reactions, and all of that. The same thing with creating a business or a startup, right? So when you've finally gotten the idea, this is like my own 2 cents. When you've gotten like the idea, you just need to first of all recognize the fact that you're not. There's a huge
The only
possibility.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not the only one on it. So there's a huge possibility that someone else has already done this before in Asia, in Europe, in America, right? So you just have to check it out, find platforms where you can even use LinkedIn, for instance, to search for something like that. Or particularly, you can use Google, you can even ask ChatGPT it to give you like some names of organizations that have already done something similar. Then you try to research them and see what they're doing. Now, the most important part about it is that you can do in market research is to figure out what they are not doing that you could do in your own idea to make it better. That way, for you to even go to this platform to see whether it exists, is you trying to validate it, whether it can work or not, if at all it's working somewhere else. Okay, so this is
Yeah.
like my own contribution. Follow the money and
Yeah.
try to
and
see
and
if it's working
and
somewhere else.
yeah, sorry, just to add to this, I just want to say something because it was a conversation I was having with a friend recently, and it's a very relatable problem. In Nigeria here, a lot of investors are working out, a lot of businesses are failing, a lot of everything bad is happening, and I was in a
A lot
conversation
of good
where they
things
were
are
like,
happening too.
yeah, thank you. Let's remain positive. Yeah, a lot of good
Yes.
things are happening. Yeah, but however, in the context of building a product and putting a platform or having a startup or whatever, I see people say, looking at this same people who have tried and failed is a reason why they wouldn't set foot there. And I'm like, instead of you basing that on that decision, why not you actually look? And because there is the possibility that, yeah, you my forerunner, you went before me, doesn't mean that you did everything right. There must be something that you did wrong that got you to the situation you're in. You understand? And then I'll be like, I want to try this from your mistake. More like learning from other people's mistakes. I think goes hand in hand. So just putting that out there. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. I think it also brings us to another point that you shouldn't be scared of sharing your ideas. Really, don't be scared of
Yeah.
sharing your ideas. Try to talk to people about your ideas. It's totally okay. But
Okay.
as a first time startup founder, you might always be worried about the the safety of your idea. But for real, ideas don't really matter so much like that. So you can always share it with other people. Okay.
Yeah.
Rukayat, I don't know if at all the responses make sense to you, but just let us know whether it makes sense or not. Okay, let's move on to the next question. So we have another one here. It says here, is MVP the same as a prototype?
Okay. Um, Straight answer, no. No. Straight answer, no. An MVP is not the same as a prototype. Uh, but in some contexts, it could be like, okay, let me break this down into context. Now, if you're looking towards building a physical product, there's something I'm going to explain this in more of BlackBerry. we all know about the story of the fall of BlackBerry, a very huge Google like company as at then, and then I think the rise of Apple kind of brought the downfall of BlackBerry, and those happened because of common decision making, like we spoke about. But however, now BlackBerry created, when the first buttonless phone came out from Apple, most of BlackBerry's investors and customer base were requesting for that sort of, remake. And BlackBerry was pretty much, really adamant to that particular, request. And they still wanted to maintain the entire button flex and all of those things. However, I think with the shortest amount of time they had when the company was collapsing, they had to quickly reiterate on producing a buttonless phone, but I'm pretty sure if you have some vivid memory, you still had the call end button and then the mouse trackpad kind of ish phone that later came out. Now they created that as in terms of I would call it a prototype because it was created in a small number by a multiple of one, to which they also distributed. However, the prototype didn't really function and then they had to return it. But however, what I'm trying to communicate to you is a prototype is different from a minimum viable product. Like I make definition clarity to what it is. A prototype is just a testable, a really easy to iterate idea of your product or hardware. How will I call it? What is the word now? Something you can hold, a collectible, yeah, something like that of your idea, and then trying to test it for faster iteration. However, an MVP, like I said, is a part of that product now in its full developed form that you've put outside to also conduct some level of testing. But right now, in terms of functionality and scalability, can it be used by several other person in their own application and environmental application? So I hope I framed that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for your response. Um, let's try to check out the another question. So, okay, this one is not like is a direct question. So, please, can we have the slide for meditation and digest it
Okay.
in later times? Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think I and the host David will look at something about that. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. Okay.
And just to add to that, if so willing by David, I don't know, should I also highlight my emails for any reach outs if they want a
Yeah.
personal,
y- y-
let's
Yeah, I
say.
thought of doing that. Actually, I went to your profile. I think this is
Yeah.
what I'm going to do just now. I'm going to drop a link to your profile on LinkedIn. Yeah, I wanted to do that,
Yeah,
but I,
that's
I wanted it
perfect.
to be after the class. Let me just
Yeah.
flash it here. So I've dropped a link to the teacher's LinkedIn. So you can just like click it and then reach out to him on LinkedIn, connect with him, and then of course share thoughts with him. Yeah. Okay. Let's go back to the questions. I will flash that again soon. Um, so I think there's another question here that talks about, so how does a metric of evaluation revolve within ideology? Ideology. Yeah.
Okay. Ideology. Ideology. I think ideology, if I understand what ideology means, is your perspective to things.
Mhm.
What's your ideology to things? Metric of evaluation. If I want to answer it, if I want to assume, this person meant ideology, not ideation. You know, yeah, I would say that metric of evaluation also kind of applies. It's about what works for you in terms of ideology. I could be like, well, we've seen people like I love polygamy. I mean, I love many wives. Personally, I don't, but that's in the context of ideology. There could be why do you feel that way? What is what is your thinking? And they will give you a lot of metric of evaluation that states certain things. What about longevity? What about building an empire? And all of those things, personally. And then personally, to my own ideology, that I do not agree to polygamy. I could also give a metric of evaluation that talks based on religious belief. I could say that a man is supposed to be just a wife, whatever. So that is how metric of, like I said, metric of evaluation goes beyond the scope. And for what I listed down, It is only in context to this ideation. When we're talking about conducting tests, user testing, there's an entire different ballgame of metric of evaluation. We're talking about bounce of rate. We're talking about conversation rate. We're talking about NPS, net profit score. We're talking about a different other aspect. So metric of evaluation remains the same in terms of purpose. What is it trying to do? It's more like giving you a data to say, to use as a yardstick to measure your decision. And remember, like I said, just to reiterate lastly, I talked about objectivity over subjectivity. That is what metric of evaluation is. It gives you more of a data-driven decision making ish kind of thing. So yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your response. For the people dropping questions, please just let us know whether you're satisfied with the responses or not. Okay. So we have another question here. In terms of impact as a metric of evaluation, under what circumstances can an idea result in negative consequences?
Okay. Yeah. And like I spoke about, impact is more qualitative. Let me try to give a different scenario, something that we use to communicate this. Like I said, so let me use a bootcamp, that bootcamp scenario. So a bootcamp in terms of impact could be like, hey, um, our impact, I want us to like, create what 50,000 developers, students or whatever that within their care, and that could be impact for them. And that impact now is more qualitative, because when it comes to qualitative, you can't really say something is wrong. It now depends on what is the belief of the company. It is quantitative that has wrongs, because quantitative is more like ones and zeros, right or wrong, left or right, false or true in terms of logical operations. However, qualitatively is more of, is this standard enough? How do you measure standard? You don't measure most qualitative things, might be wrong, but in my headspace right now, I can tell you that you don't measure most qualitative things. Qualitatively, you cannot tell if I'm a good person. You cannot tell if David is a good person or a bad person, because to some persons he has, interfaced with, they will vouch that I am a good person or David is
I
a
beg to
perfect
differ.
person.
I beg
Yeah,
to differ. I'm a
exactly.
good person.
And to another audience, they will say, hey, David is a good person.
um, okay. So Williams, I think you're frozen. Um, Williams, Williams, I think.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
think
think.
Nigeria happened for a second.
Okay. All right. Well,
Yeah, so I'm back. So yeah, just
maybe,
to round up,
maybe
sorry.
time just had to freeze so that I can say that I'm a good person. I think that's what happened.
Right. So yeah, just to round up, so like I said, impact is about someone's point of view. Just put it that way. So in the context of like in a boot camp, grading 5,000 could be their best achievements. Hey, thumbs up, great. But if I want to compete against another boot camp, I will tell you that, hey, for us, impact to be, we want to create professionals, people who are ready to work, people who work with teams that they don't have difficulties, they're professional, they're clean, they use state of the art principles and whatever. That could be an impact for me. Now when you bring these two impact in terms of comparison, one creates 5,000 people who are not employable and hireable ish, and then one creates less, perhaps 10, perhaps 20, who are hireable, and all of that stuff. You could now tell who really is making impact. And remember my story of being a LinkedIn voice. To other person, that would have been perfect. The followership, the glamour, the showroom, whatever, would have been nice. But for me, I wanted something more home based, more practical. And like I said, you can't really measure in terms of negative. You can just evaluate in terms of weighing things up. So yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that response. We have like I think three more questions, right?
Okay.
So in terms of oh, this was the one we just finished. Okay, so that one is gone. Okay, this is another person asking for the slides. Okay, And
Yeah, you could. I think, well, by flashing that stuff, they can always reach out to me. I can always send it over through David. I can any platform that works. Yeah.
okay, that's perfect. Okay, so we have this other very long question. How can ideation techniques like brainstorming and mind mapping be adapted for use by an
Be
individual
adapted.
who is developing ideas independently? Are there specific adjustments or additional strategies? Yeah.
Okay. So most of the times, like I will always say, brainstorming is like it's more like ranting. Let me relate to it personally like that. Brainstorming is like ranting. Mostly, I think, according to scholars and Googlers and wherever, we talk about brainstorming in terms of in context to group of person. So I could just come in a meeting right now and say, hey, let's brainstorm. But however, to go straight into the point, brainstorming can also be done individually, and there is no adjustment that needs to be made. All you need to do is right now, I'm sitting on the space. Let's say, for example, like the network glitch that happened, my network is down. And I want to really brainstorm about it. I just quickly write out, check my account and my data balance, check my network signal, check, if I have some money in the account, check to do another subscription, and so on. That is me brainstorming right at the get go, keeping the same principles like I talked about the other time, which I talk about brainstorming. You need to understand the context. I gave you, lines to what brainstorming is, or rather ideation is. Also, mind mapping can also be done individually without adjusting anything. The same framework works, and all you just need to do is start with the central problem. And personally, I've done this myself, and I think this happened before we hired, because I think overly in Pendulum we have about give or take three designers in one project, and also a designer in another project. So I think total of four. And I know that before those people came on board, I and the most immediate members of the team already had some level of mind map. And trust me, I did that individually, where I just went to Figma Jam. I'm supposed to have shared some tools to ideation. I think they're on the slide though. But yeah, just start with the central problem. This is what I want to create, and then you expand on it. So you mostly want to, in fact, rely more on individuality if you're trying to practice these things, and most of them can be done individually. Some of them not really, like things like cat sorting. You can't do cat sorting alone. You have to have people to cat sort with. That's almost another technique to ideation. But yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Williams. Thank you so much. So we have another question. This is from Rukayat. I think she's saying thank you for responding to the previous question, and then she's asking another question. So thank you so much. Makes a lot of sense. I'm also concerned about regulatory compliance research before building the product. What are reputable resource we should go to do this research before building?
Okay. Yeah. It's very important. I think there is a platform called Investopedia. If if you do a lot of market and business research, Investopedia. But however, it is important to do some level of regulatory checks and all of those things. The question is, how do you know about it? I can't really tell you how you know that you need to do a regulatory check, but once you know you need to do a regulatory check, you just have to Google that stuff. You could use ChatGPT and do I have to do a regulatory check on building a fintech app? What are the necessary things I need to know? And I even think more recently, I was working in my CTO and we're discussing about building our own fintech, or rather, was it building our own fintech or incorporating another fintech platform? I can't really recall. And for the first time, he was telling me about certain exams I have to sit and take and all of that stuff. And I joked about it that I was done taking exams, a long time ago when I was in school. I'm not doing that stuff anymore. But yeah, the point is, yeah, regulatory checks, you can always use ChatGPT, and thank God for Meta AI that is within our WhatsApp. I use that a lot. You can just communicate everything you want to do, and fast check. Do I have to do a regulatory check around this? And I think you would know. We have things like patent rights. We have things like trademarks. Those are like some level of also regulatories that building a business you need to do just so that you can keep your IPs protected. IP protection is something that somehow you either stumble upon or you research about it. So yeah, I hope that's somehow answers the question.
Thank you very much again, Williams. Thank you so much. Isa, you can just like let us know whether you are satisfied with the response that has been given. So I think we don't have questions anymore. And I think we're going to be bringing the session to a close in a few
Yeah.
minutes. So for me, I want to say a very big thank you to Williams for creating out time out of his very busy schedule to be part of this webinar. This was our very first business development webinar for the Nocode Africa Bootcamp. And the reason why we are doing this is because we're trying to see how we can build a community of startuppers, like people who are interested in creating solutions to problems that are found within their community, within their niche, and trying to build something tangible out of it. And while not having so much of resources to do this, which is why we get to teach them how to build their MVPs without writing code, so that they don't get to spend so much money starting, building, and growing their business. So thank you very much, Williams, for being here. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, your experience. I really appreciate this. And for everyone that has participated in this boot camp and in this class, I would like you to try and connect with Williams on LinkedIn. Yeah, he is actually a thought leader and chief product officer at Pendulum. So he has a lot of things to actually teach you. So you can connect with him on LinkedIn and then um, ask questions. Okay, so I think it's telling me here. I'm trying to
Yeah, I'm
paste a
open
link.
to that.
Okay, you can hear me very well, right?
Yeah,
Can you
I'm
hear
good.
me?
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Okay, because I'm trying to paste the link on the comment section, but it's telling me internet issues. I don't know why I'm having internet issues. Okay, so I think this is going to be the. This brings us to the end of our session. Okay, this is another problem. It's still not showing. I think I
Yeah.
would just go up and flash it, flash the one that I had posted before.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
it
so
came up
this is
right now.
okay, great. So this is the link, and
Yeah.
I would like you to connect with Williams and just bounce ideas with him where necessary, and of course be very open to sharing your ideas, but be try to protect your intellectual property if there is any. Um,
Yeah.
yes, if there's any. So I wish everybody a very beautiful weekend and try to see how you can practice the things that we have done in the very first week of the bootcamp, which includes learning the real estate mobile application without coding, the e-commerce application, and of course the webinar on ideation. All right. So I think this brings us to the end of this session. And thank you once again, Williams, for being here. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, everyone that also, gave me the opportunity to listen, and also your questions. And like David said, my LinkedIn is literally open, and you can reach out to me, and I'll see how we could answer, questions. And like he said, feel free to share ideas, but feel free to protect. I mean, personally, I'm like, don't share ideas personally, but that is a personal objective. I think
Okay.
David is right in the aspect of sharing ideas, but also trying to maintain some level of IP protection, because like they say, idea rules the world. So it's important to keep that in the perspective. So yeah, peace, and thanks for being here as well. Thanks for the opportunity, David, and I believe we'll talk more, and soon we'll see you soon.
No
Yeah.
problem. No problem. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend, everybody. And see you next week.
Yeah.